If you wish to be a Formula One driver, get one thing straight first. Almost nobody who wants this ever makes it. Your journey begins at 5 years old, strapped into a go-kart that weighs half as much as you do, in a gravel lot behind a hardware store. Your father jogs alongside, one hand hovering near the frame, watching your every move. On your very first lap, you spin out, crashing straight into a stack of tires and bursting into tears. But instead of comforting you, your father simply pulls the cart back onto the track, checks the engine, and tells you to go again. He already understands something you won't realize for another decade. This sport does not reward comfort. It rewards the rare, terrifying willingness to climb right back into something that just hurt you and drive even faster the second time. You spend your childhood consumed by regional karting circuits instead of normal weekends. Behind the scenes, your family's finances quietly bend under the crushing weight of entry fees, tires, and race fuel. Because karting at a serious level isn't just an expensive hobby. It's the ultimate filter in motorsport. It eliminates far more genuinely talented kids for a lack of money than it ever does for a lack of skill. You win a regional title at 8, a national championship at 11. Your bedroom slowly fills with trophies, cards, and medal that mean less to you with every passing year. Winning locally no longer feels like the goal. The real goal is a distant dream alive on a television screen, inhabited by drivers who once impossibly stood exactly where you're standing right now. At 12 years old, a driver academy scout notices you. Suddenly, you're invited to a shootout against 200 other karting prodigies from around the globe, kids who are already faster and more composed behind a wheel than most adults could ever dream of being. You perform well enough to earn a development contract. It's a document your parents read 3 full times before signing. Because at 12, you are about to become, in a very real financial sense, an asset, a corporate investment that expects a return. Your childhood ends the moment that pen hits the paper, not with a bang, but with a quiet, heavy shift. Now, a bad weekend isn't just disappointing. It's a data point that could tear up a contract you're still too young to fully comprehend. You learn far earlier than any child ever should that being good is no longer enough. You have to be measurably better than every other 12-year-old the company is quietly keeping tabs on. In your mid-teens, you step up to single-seaters, open-wheel cars with real horsepower for the first time. The physical toll hits you instantly. The next strength needed to hold your head steady under G-forces simply didn't exist in a go-kart. You start a grueling gym routine built around a muscle group most 15-year-olds have never once thought about, because a driver whose neck gives out in the final laps is a driver who starts making the exact small errors that end careers. You trade a normal school schedule for a private tutor built around a racing calendar. Ordinary academics just can't survive a life where every weekend is spent in a different country. You watch old friends build normal teenage lives, parties, first loves, moments that don't have to be lived through a phone screen between track sessions. In your loneliest moments, you tell yourself this sacrifice is temporary, though deep down, you already suspect it will define the rest of your life either way. Then comes your first violent crash in junior formula, a wheel-to-wheel touch at well over 100 miles an hour that flips your car upside down against the barrier. You walk away with nothing worse than severe bruising, but the fear doesn't walk away with you. It stays. Sitting quietly in the car beside you for months afterward, that's when you learn the second real lesson of motorsport. Fear never truly disappears with experience. You simply get better at driving through it without letting it show, because back in the garage, engineers are studying every single line on your data trace, lap by lap. They are looking for hesitation, the exact fraction of a second lift that separates a future champion from a driver whose career quietly dies before it even begins. You climb through the junior ranks, and each step becomes a smaller, far more brutal filter than the last. 20 drivers on any given grid, all of them proven winners, all backed by academies or multi-million-dollar sponsors betting everything on them reaching the top. You watch kids you raced against in go-karts quietly disappear year after year, replaced by the next wave rising up beneath you, and you realize the cold, hard truth. Talent alone stopped being the deciding factor a long time ago. What separates the ones who survive is an almost inhuman consistency, because, at this level, a single disappointing season can destroy a career, wiping out 15 years of sacrifice and an entire family's financial legacy in the blink of an eye. You spend hours, locked inside a simulator that costs more than most houses. You memorize circuits you've never physically set foot on, corner by corner, curb by curb, because by the time you land at the real track, you're expected to know it intimately. The sport has evolved. Raw, natural feel is no longer enough. Without an almost academic mastery of data, telemetry is compared obsessively against your teammates and rivals. Tenths and hundredths of a second are dissected in brutal debriefs, not for glory, but for pure survival. Because in this business, the moment a younger driver posts faster sector times in your exact same car, you are replaced. In your early 20s, you win a top junior championship. For a brief, disorienting moment, you allow yourself to believe the door has finally opened, only to discover the brutal reality. Even a prestigious title guarantees absolutely nothing. There are only 20 seats in the entire world at the pinnacle of this sport, and standing right behind you is a line of equally hungry drivers, each backed by sponsors, funding, and stories just as compelling as yours. You spend an entire offseason in cold conference rooms, sitting across from team principals who analyze you the way a buyer inspects a car. They aren't just looking at your lap times. They're evaluating your mental fortitude under the relentless, suffocating scrutiny that will follow your every move from the moment you sign. The call finally comes from a team you did not expect, a reserve contract at first, not even a race seat, and you accept immediately because it is still infinitely closer than anything you have held before, and you spend a season in simulators and factory visits, learning the rhythm of a race weekend from the inside without ever actually racing in one, memorizing engineers' names and radio protocols, waiting for an opportunity that might never come, until in your second season, a driver is injured and your phone rings on a Thursday afternoon telling you to be at the circuit by Friday morning, and you do not sleep at all that night. You climb into the car for your first real practice session, your hands shaken inside your gloves in a way no simulator could ever prepare you for. The sheer physical violence of the car is beyond anything you felt in the junior ranks. The braking forces alone hit so hard they nearly black out your vision at the end of the longest straight. You finish somewhere in the middle of the field, respectable, unremarkable, and utterly overwhelming. In the debrief, your race engineer, a man twice your age who has seen 100 wide-eyed rookies walk through that door, looks at you and simply says, "Solid start." And from his tone alone, you realize the cold truth. Most rookies never even get a second session to build on their first. The following season, you earn a full race seat. Your name is painted on the side of the car, right beside a teammate who watches you with quiet wariness. He knows what you know. In this sport, your teammate isn't just a colleague, he's your ultimate rival. Teams field two identical cars and compare their drivers constantly. The second you consistently outperform him, his seat becomes uncertain. It's an unspoken war that simmers under every conversation in the garage, no matter how polite you are in public. Then comes your first official Grand Prix weekend, and it violently overloads every single sense. 20 cars line up on the formation lap in front of roaring grandstands filled with tens of thousands of people. The 5 red lights go out. For the next 90 minutes, the entire world vanishes. Your consciousness narrows down to just a few meters of asphalt ahead of your front wing. Every split-second decision you make will be analyzed, frame by frame, by millions of people who have never sat inside a race car in their lives. When you finally cross the finish line, you are exhausted in a way that goes far beyond physical strain. The physical toll is real enough. Your body has sweated out several pounds of fluid while fighting G-forces several times your own weight for 90 straight minutes. But the real exhaustion comes from the psychological torture, 90 minutes of unbroken absolute focus where a single wandering thought means a wall at 200 miles an hour. As you climb out of the cockpit, your legs genuinely struggle to support your weight for those first few steps. Then in your fourth race, it happens, a violent, high-speed crash. The car is completely destroyed. Your torso is dark, with deep, painful purple bruises along the harness lines. You sit in the medical center, answering routine concussion protocol questions while your team, hundreds of miles away, back at the factory, is already calculating the multi-million-dollar cost of the chassis you just wrote off. Nobody says the number to your face. but you know it's there, sitting quietly behind every single conversation about your seat for weeks to come. You learn to manage a media schedule that eats up nearly as much of your week as the actual driving. Press conferences where a single, careless sentence becomes a headline in a dozen languages by morning. Sponsor appearances demanding high energy you don't actually have after a brutal race weekend. Public scrutiny becomes so relentless that you eventually hire someone for one specific job, filter what reaches you, because obsessively reading unfiltered opinions about your driving after a bad race is a habit that breaks drivers faster than any high-speed crash ever could. Off the track, your personal life quietly erodes, just as it did for every driver who came before you. A partner struggles to build a life around a calendar that drags you to a different continent almost every week. Relationships end quietly. Over late-night video calls in hotel rooms between circuits, you tell yourself the sport is simply too demanding for anyone on the outside to ever truly understand. Though privately, you wonder if that's the truth or just the lie drivers tell themselves to avoid looking at the cost. In your second season, you score your first podium. It's a chaotic race, pure pace mixed with drama on the track ahead of you, and standing up there, spraying champagne in front of tens of thousands of screaming fans, you feel it. For the exact length of a national anthem, a sense of total accomplishment so complete it almost makes every year of sacrifice worth it. Then the anthem ends. Within the hour, you're back in a cold debrief room discussing tire degradation like the podium never even happened. Because this sport doesn't pause for celebration. The next race is already 2 weeks away. You spend your prime years locked in a punishing grind across 5 continents. Jet lag becomes a permanent background noise you just learn to live with. Your body is maintained by a team of physios and nutritionists whose only job is to keep you alive and performing at peak condition. Then in your 4th full season, you win your very first Grand Prix, standing on the top step, hearing your country's national anthem echo across the circuit in your honor. You finally allow that 5-year-old child who cried in a gravel lot behind a hardware store to feel something close to satisfaction. Though even in that perfect moment, a voice in the back of your head is already calculating what those 25 points mean for the championship standings. In your early 30s, you finally fight for the World Championship, a grueling, season-long war decided by fractions of a second across more than 20 races. Every split-second strategy call will be debated for decades by people who were never in the car, and whether you win the title or lose it by a single point in a heart-stopping finale standing under the bright lights surrounded by cameras, you realize a quiet truth. The difference between glory and heartbreak was thin enough to be decided by one single lapse in focus. That truth stays with you for the rest of your life, but time is undefeated. Eventually, your career ages toward its end, the way every driver's career does. A younger kid from the categories you once dominated starts posting sector times that once separated you from the world. You feel the quiet indignity of engineers looking past you in meetings. Contract talks grow shorter, colder. You realize what every legend before you learned the hard way. This sport has no loyalty to a body that is even slightly slower than it used to be, no matter how many trophies you brought them. You retire on your own terms if you're lucky, and someone else's if you aren't. Sitting in the paddock for the very last time as a driver, watching mechanics wheel away a car that is no longer yours, a sudden wave of grief hits you. You don't grieve the money or the fame. You grieve those 90 minutes on a Sunday afternoon, that pure, narrowed, total focus that nothing in ordinary life will ever replicate. A feeling you privately suspect you'll spend the rest of your life quietly chasing. And somewhere right now, in a gravel lot behind a hardware store, a 5-year-old child is being strapped into a go-kart that weighs half as much as they do. They are about to spin out for the very first time and burst into tears, and standing nearby is a parent who already understands what that child does not, that this sport does not reward comfort. It rewards only the rare, terrifying willingness to climb back in and go faster the second time. That child has no idea of the decades of sacrifice, heartbreak, and impossibly thin margins that first spin is setting into motion, or what it will feel like after everything to finally hear their national anthem played in their honor for the very first time.